Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. I have my all-time favorite guest, Joe Dispenza here, and we're going to be talking about a subject that he's going to be talking about this coming weekend on February 12th through the 14th. He is going to be talking at I Can Do It in Seattle, and you can go to his website tell me your website again. Is it just Joe Dispenza?
drjoedispenza.com.
drjohnspenza.com to sign up for that class. And you're going to be the keynote finale speaker on the 14th. So it's going to be very exciting. So we're going to do a little preview to just whet your appetite before that event. So welcome.
Hi, it's great to be with you again.
Yeah, it's really nice to be with you. So I was talking to you earlier. I've been a devotee, even though I'm sure you would hate that word, but I've been very devoted to listening to your tapes, and I've been to Joe's is it the progressive workshop?
hmm
And then I'm going to the advanced workshop come February. And so I'm super, super excited. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions about a little bit about your work and then a little bit about how you think about finding your authentic self, which is the theme in I Can Do It. So I wanted to ask a little bit about how you came to this work. Like it seems like there's definitely the scientific piece that I love that you bring to it, but what are the traditions and or sacred texts, or are there any that you use to come up with your work?
You know, um, I think science is the contemporary language of mysticism. I
Hmm.
think science is the way to demystify the mystical. And I think the moment you start talking about sacred texts or religion or tradition or culture, the effect of that is that language begins to divide an audience.
Mm.
And so I think science creates community, it unifies. And I like that because if you teach people with a little bit of quantum physics, a little bit of neuroscience, a little bit of neuroendocrinology, a little psychoneuroimmunology, a little epigenetics. All of those sciences point the finger at possibility.
Hmm.
And so if you look back and historically, when you're studying normal or you're studying rats in an unchanging environment, you're not going to see a lot of biological changes as a result of it.
Hmm.
But put animals or human beings in enriched environments, and there's very strong biological changes. So, for me personally, I'm open-minded, but I'm a pragmatist, and I think if you teach people the what and the why, the how gets easier. And I think
Hmm.
this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And so my passion is really to demystify those sacred texts in a way that gives people some affordability to be able to take it home in their life and use it in some way. So
Hmm.
I'm not a traditionalist in any way. I'm more of a practical person. And so if you're going to talk to me about spiritual principles, if I can't understand how they actually work, I don't want to leave anything up to conjecture or dogma or superstition.
Hmm.
I want it to be very clear. And I believe that when it is that clear, and people can resonate with it and understand it, and they can repeat it, then they're prepared for the experience. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, I've come across all kinds of books. I've read everything, all different sects. But for me, the real language that unifies people is the scientific mind.
Hmm. Okay, so now I want to talk about your own journey to finding your authentic self. I'm using the authentic self. You may call it something else. Maybe you call it genius. I was trying to figure out what your higher intelligence. What would you call it?
No, I think I think the authentic self is a good start.
Okay.
It's a good start.
Okay. So what was your journey to finding your authentic self?
Well, I mean, I've had several wake up calls in my life, and I think that in order for some of us to wake up, we need a wake up call. And I think there's really, and then I had this kind of download in a meditation last week, and that is that there's really two types of wake up calls.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, wait for the crisis and the trauma wake up call, the diagnosis or the disease, because that catches their attention and it stops them in their tracks, and they're not going to behave the same way. They're not going to think the same way. They're not going to feel the same way. There's a shift in the lexicon of who they are. And so I think that the other wake up call is when you have a mystical moment, when you have
Mm.
a transcendental experience. I mean, when you have something that's so profoundly mind and body altering that you could never go back to being the same person again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that experience enriches the brain, and experience, the end product of it, is an emotion. So what we're seeing in our work is we're seeing these very high amplitudes of energy that are taking place in people's brains, and they're having a full-on mystical experience, but they're having such a profound moment that they're having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. Now, why is this
Mm-hmm.
important? Because they're not open their eyes, they're not tasting anything or seeing anything or feeling anything. The brain is so changed chemically that it feels like it's more real than this.
Mm-hmm.
And when that occurs, I think that brings us closer to our divine self. And so I think that when we begin to remove those layers, those masks, the facades, the ego that block the flow of the divine in us, I think that's when we become more like it. I think its nature becomes our nature, its mind becomes our mind, its will becomes our mind, its love for life becomes our love for life. And the side effect of that, of course, is we start to give because it is a giver of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had several wake up calls in both realms of, having my own journey with a crisis and an injury that kind of got me started on this process. But that was really small compared to diving deep into the work and having profoundly mystical experiences. And when I have had those mystical experiences, the funny thing about it is that when I come out of that mystical experience, the first thought I have is, I have this all wrong. This is the way
Yeah.
I've been thinking is not really the way it is.
Hmm.
And that kind of paradigm shift brings me closer to the elevated states of who we really are. I'm less judgmental. I'm less impatient. I'm less frustrated. I'm just more aware of how difficult it is to be human and what it takes to really
Mm-hmm.
overcome ourselves. So I think it happens both ways. I think there's both realms of a wake up call.
Mm-hmm. So when you have that transcendent moment, and you said that you're kind of re-examining how things really are, how, I mean, because I've had those transcendent moments too, and I don't even know how to even articulate half of them because they are not even of this reality. They can't. They're beyond an understanding of this reality. But what are some of the transcendent moments, or maybe a different way, either the transcendent moments that you had, or what were the ahas that you had, or are they even are you able to articulate them?
Well, I mean, well, yeah, I'm able to articulate many of them, and each one of them has been a teaching tool for me in the work that I do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people say, "Where do you get your information from?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really know. I have experiences, and then it takes me a certain amount of time to be able to explain those experiences in words." And so I don't really try to think differently after the experience. It's more like some illusion or veil has been lifted, and I see the more of the way reality is without me filtering my perception through the past.
Mm.
So whether it's just seeing energy or having an interdimensional experience or really profoundly experiencing a level of awareness that is transcendent of anything that I've ever experienced before, and really engaging in the love of life and connecting to a more profound intelligence. There's so many lies. I mean, God is not an insecure white guy with a beard that's with a laptop up there trying to keep score if you've done anything wrong and then
Yeah.
lock you in the closet for the rest of your life and turn the heat up. I mean, it's just not the way it is. That's just this intelligence is just a loving intelligence and intelligent love. And I think when we start really having those profound moments, we pop through a veil and we get a glimpse. And when we take it back with us, the key is to remember and not to forget. The remembering process is the challenge.
Yeah.
So I do think that in my observation of observing a lot of our students involved in some of these profound experiences, primarily interdimensional experiences and mystical experiences, I mean, they are not the same people. I just interviewed someone in Germany. I'm in Switzerland this past weekend, and she just hand me an envelope, and she just said, "Look, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a very rational person. Advanced workshop in August in Munich changed my life forever. I'm
Mm.
not the same person." And she proceeded to explain. what that interdimensional experience was and how she just really is more calm. And we happened to capture the whole thing. We got up to have a
Wow.
scan, and we saw her pre and post measurements, and she's not the same person. I mean, it's pretty cool.
And do you think she's going to be permanently changed? I know she said she's not the same person. So there's insights. Anytime you have an insight, you're in some ways you're a different person because you shifted perspectives.
Right.
But have you found that with yourself or with the people that you're monitoring, it's a permanent change
Yeah.
or
Some yes and no. So to me there's a difference between insight and an epiphany.
hmm
Like an insight is kind of like, oh, geez, my father was a perfectionist, and that's why why I have anxiety. Well, great. The insight helps you, but my question is, what are you going to do with it?
hmm
So, because insight really doesn't change behavior.
hmm
But when you have the full on download where it's kind of like it reaches your body, it's
hmm
not just intellectual, it's your body's having the experience and you're
hmm
caught up in the profundity of the moment. It's those kind of experiences that really tend to carry an energy, a frequency, and all frequency carries information, and that information enhances our consciousness. So now we're seeing a broader spectrum of reality that we never saw before. So we see about less than 1% of reality. That's a
hmm
fact.
hmm
So boom, you have this transcendent experience, and it's dimensional, or there's light, and there's whatever the person's description is. What happens is now they have that experience. Well, experience enriches the brain. So now they reorganize the circuitry in their brain. So they're going to perceive more of reality because they've had the experience already.
hmm
So
hmm
perception then is based on past experiences, but
Right.
now their inner experience is more profound than any past external experience. And the emotion that's created from the experience is an emotion like awe or holy,
Right.
Jesus, or an awakening or an enlightenment or an understanding. And it's that kind of level of emotion that really reaches the body because the thought is the language for the brain and the feeling and the emotion is the language for the body.
Right.
When you combine how you think and feel, what you get is a new state of being.
Right.
So we've seen people with really strong um, traumas in their past have these really strong moments of internal mysticism, and wow, their physical health actually changes as a result of it too.
Yeah, and permanently. I have to
Permanent.
remember for those results that I know you're going to share them on Friday, but that's the shocking thing. They permanently changed.
Yeah, and so the other thing about that is that we now, when we do our events workshop in Tacoma next week, I've brought on a very, very empirical scientist that we are going to start doing the psychological measurements as well. And we're correlating those psychological measurements with our brain scan, and they're going to get a pre-psychological measurement, a post-psychological measurement, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months,
Oh, very
9
cool.
months. And so we're going to find out really if it's helping people in the long term. We're also going to measure um, cortisol levels, which are stress hormones, and IgA levels, immunoglobulin A, which is the
hmm
primary defense against bacteria and viruses. So as your cortisol levels go up, your IgA levels go down. So we are going to work on changing our internal states so that we can begin to elevate our IgA levels, and you don't need a flu shot,
Mm, mm.
and diminish your cortisol levels and what the percentage of that is, and correlate it with the brain scans, correlate it with the HRV monitors, correlate it with our psychological evaluations, and come up with a great model.
So after 3, 6, and 9 months, you're going to have people take those tests so that they can measure all of those things over that time period to see, oh, that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
That's going to be really fascinating. Because I've actually had those kind of transcendent moments, and they last, and they're a memory, but I forget them. Throughout the day, I forget. I had this one experience. I could really feel what unconditional love could feel like, that pure love. And it was awe-inspiring. And for probably 3 months, I was just like blissed out. But then, now, 5 years later, I can remember it. I have it in my memory. I probably have it in my body memory someplace, but I can't. It's more
Yeah.
of an intellectual thing than
Right.
versus a permanent state of being.
Well, what we want to do, our aim, is actually have those experiences be accessible and reproducible. And that's why we're
Yeah.
doing measurements, because honestly, I've gained so much wisdom from studying brains, and we've looked at over 3,000 brain scans and over 1,800 HRV monitors, heart rate monitors, and tests, and boy, I think that what we want to be able to do is be able to use a language that actually opens the door to reproduce the experience. And you'll see in the advanced workshop there's certain brain neurotransmitters and metabolites that have to be activated, and we're actually figuring out how to activate them so the mystical experience becomes part of a person's biology.
Well, how would you explain someone like Eben Alexander, excuse me, who had a near-death experience, and he said his brain just shut off, and so it violated all his understanding about neuroscience because he basically thought, well, my neocortex is shut off. He had a certain type of something type of meningitis, and his brain shut off. And he said, but yet I was experiencing consciousness, this vivid kind of transcendental moments. How would you explain those things, and if it's not through the brain?
Oh, no, no, no. I mean, let's face it. We are. If you believe you're your body, that's the first paradigm shift you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
You are actually not your body. You are consciousness using the brain and body to produce different levels of mind. And consciousness moving through the brain is what creates mind. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have the analytical, theoretical, intellectual neocortex, that is the volumes turned down to it, then what happens is that part is what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind. So the door
Oh.
opens, and once the door opens, consciousness is actually experiencing itself independent of its biology. Now the brain
Mm.
can actually track it as a memory, but your analytical mind is not in the way. And as a matter of fact, if your analytical mind is in the way, you're going to lose the experience.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to actually lose the moment and lose the experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that I've had moments where I've just been out of body or whatever it is, and the moment I start thinking, getting analytical, it's over.
Yeah, back
You
to your body. Boom. Yeah.
you, you have to stay in that kind of loose and transcendent state. So when you see NDEs, near-death experiences, or you see induced after-death communications, or whatever it is, all of the person's analytical facilities are set aside. And that's what makes it so unique, because if a scientist has a stroke or has a brain condition, and the analytical mind is out of the way, and they're experiencing themselves as a consciousness independent of this realm of reality, and the doors of perception open to them, with that shift in consciousness, that consciousness separate from their biology, is a correlated energy. You can't have consciousness without energy. You can't have light without information.
Mm-hmm.
So as they experience that amplitude of energy, that high frequency, that's what actually is recorded neurologically in the brain. But it's
Ah.
the thinking brain that's processing it is in the way. The thinking brain is out of the way. So consciousness has an experience of itself independent of the body. And, it's like, you can, consciousness is non-local and you can be
Right.
anywhere. And that's
Right.
what makes it cool.
Okay, so going back to the analogy of turning down the volume, so to speak, of our normal mind, which is like filtering, analyzing everything, and what you said is you turn the volume down. In your typical day, because I know you just drove back from, hit traffic, and I assume that you're not like, oh, I'm gonna turn my conscious analytical mind up while I'm driving, or maybe you don't. I mean, how do you adjust the volume, or when you're trying to balance ego and this higher mind and when you're trying to balance these two things in reality, not when you're in meditation, but
Right.
day in, day out.
Well, that's a great question. And of course, my answer is always eyes open, eyes closed. I mean, for me personally, I love my analytical mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a healthy analytical mind. I love the way I reason. I love the way I learn things. I love the way I dovetail concepts. I love interacting with great minds and having great conversations and learning new stuff. And all of that's important for me. But when it comes time to create, or it comes time to produce an effect, that analytical mind who's wondering how to do it or how long it's going to take or when is it going to happen, that is the very voice that has to get out of the way.
Hmm.
So it turns out that when you're driven by the hormones of stress, all of a sudden now you become overly analytical. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the problem, because a very, very hormones of stress are always going to cause you to anticipate the next moment based on their past experience, and that's the analytical mind. So the more the person's revving up those stress chemicals, and the more they're angry or frustrated or impatient or confused or they're judgmental or envious or jealous or suffering, they're all created from the hormones of stress. And now the analytical mind is actually driving the brain into more higher states of arousal. So then in arousal, you believe the outer world is more real than the inner world, because in arousal, your brain thinks there's a lion around the corner. And why would it close our eyes and go within? Why would we open our hearts and be vulnerable if there's danger out there? So then in my waking day, I just have a check system to see if I'm out of balance. And I've just noticed that after years of doing this, because in my mornings, when I get beyond myself in my meditation, the rest of the day, it's called the default mode network in the brain. Meditation, in our students primarily, that's the part of your brain that's the critic, that's saying, you can't do this, it's too hard, I have this problem, it's never going to change. It's a voice that's talking to you in your head all the time.
Yeah.
We call that intrusive thoughts, or the default mode network.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what meditation does is it actually cools the circuits off that have to do with that part of your brain while you're in meditation.
Right.
But what we've found now is that those circuits actually stay shut off for the remainder of the day, and most people, as long as they don't have a severe shock or trauma.
Really?
Yeah. So then the natural effect is you're just kind of trusting a lot more. You're just knowing it's going to work out. You know that things are going to, unfold for you in the way that's right for you. You're going to trust the universe. You're going to love your life without getting that critic involved again. So, yeah, I travel a lot. I'm busy. I mean, we just had an unbelievably super crazy busy day in my clinic, but I had a lot of fun too. And I'm not going to go from my clinic to my office, my home office, and get stressed out because I have an interview. I just know that it's going to work, and it works. So, and if it doesn't work, then at least I didn't fall from grace.
Okay, so as I understand you correctly, what happens is you try to do meditation as a way to basically reduce the stress level. And when you're able to reduce the stress level, you're able to control the volume, so to speak. If you can't control your stress, and you can't control the volume, and it seems to me all is lost, if I understand you correctly.
Well, the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind and change your brain waves from that high arousal, what we call high beta brain state, into alpha, and to be able to slow those brain waves down. Now, if you're practicing that every day in your meditation, and you have to get beyond your analytical mind every day and get beyond yourself, then it would make sense that if you notice you started feeling a little out of balance, you should be able to regulate that internally when you notice. And that's what makes it cool. That's what allows you to be emotionally intelligent, right? So
one should be able to, not that one can all the time, but I'm having a hard time, because to me, actually, my ego is totally having a hissy fit right now. It's not happy. It's noticing that someone is actually, I'm making express motions, through my meditation, during your meditations, and doing more and more guests who, by the way, not surprisingly, are telling me the same message in different forms 6 or 7 times with every interview. I didn't even plan it that way. I just book guests and message over and over. My ego is having a hissy fit. It's not happy.
Just before the war is over, the last battle is always the hardest.
Okay.
And that's what the analytical mind does, is it always says, well, what about me? It's not working. What's wrong with me? I need a brain scan. It's my mother's fault. I mean, all of that is a way for us to rationalize with our analytical ego that we're not okay. So I promise you, in 4.5 days at the advanced workshop, that little devil's going to be in the back seat, and it's going to be silenced. And you just got to show up and do the work, and you'll see. You'll go further. You'll hit the wall, then you'll break through. We've seen this so many times. Hit the wall, break through. And all of a sudden, you'll realize that you're not going to believe in that voice a whole lot,
It's
too.
been a while because I think I did your workshop probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I've been doing these meditations every day. Now, do I do them religiously? Is my mind always like embracing it at the same level? No, I can't honestly say that it is. And I would say that my stress levels, as they've been increasing, it's harder to actually get into that really relaxed mode that I was able to because my ego is kind of like, wait, you're doing this again? I'm going to put you to sleep. Or you're doing this again? I'm going to come up with all sorts of objections and like bring up all sorts of to dos that I wouldn't have had in meditation before. There's almost like a sense of disassembling of what was and a dismantling and a sense of like I'm feeling sad because there's a sense of loss. There's a sense of real loss of what was.
Well, we call that the biological self, biological
Mhm.
death of the old self,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
that's okay. I mean, I wouldn't really spend a whole lot of time getting caught up in that because when the old self dies, you got to reinvent the new self,
Mhm.
and that means you got to decide who you want to be, and you can't get up as the same person who sat down. You better feel unlimited. You better feel invincible. You better feel successful. You better feel like a leader. You better feel like a patient parent. You better feel clear. And that's what we want, is that when our students get up, they have an inward experience that transforms them, and the experience turns into a mood. And the
Hmm.
mood turns into a temperament, and temperament
Mhm.
turns into a new personality. But when people have difficulty getting beyond themselves, then the analytical mind actually gets worse. And I'm
Oh.
looking at, I've looked at 3,000 brain scans of our students in doing the work, and boy, I can tell you that your brain will never change your brain. I can tell you your analytical
Right.
mind never change the analytical mind. The ego will never change the ego. Matter doesn't change matter. The program doesn't change the program. It's only when you become pure consciousness, and that means you got to get beyond yourself in order to do that and become no body, no one, no thing, no where, and no time.
Right.
That's the moment that you detach from your body. That's the moment you detach from your identity that's connected to your environment and people and time and places. That's the moment. We've seen this over and over again. That's when you're at your best.
Yeah.
And do that over and over again in the advanced workshop so you will know when you're there and you will know when you're not there.
Ah, okay. So it's almost anchoring that sense of it. So you're like, aha, I'm not there. And
Right.
then I can do whatever I need to do to kind of calm down whatever is happening. But what I'm hearing you say is like not invest too much, because I have this person having a tantrum. Why are you doing this? This isn't working. And right now I'm investing like it's okay, it's all right. I'm tapping, I'm doing all these things to kind of calm it down and work with it because I like my ego. I have a great mind. I have all these skills. I like it. But
Nothing
then
wrong with that. It's just you just got to know when to ask it to
calm
just
down.
come down a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you are going to do the work, then you have to understand that there is going to be a little wrestling going on with it, and that's our job. Then is to really just have the ability to know when we're there
Hmm.
and have the ability to know when we're not, and then know how to get back to that place so that it's in check. That's the key.
Right. And I also heard you say so it's not only knowing and anchoring when you're at that place, but then I'm also heard you say, and it's about actually um, going into that no body place. If you can't get there, which I will, hopefully when I go to your next workshop, it's probably hard to actually. You're not at that place until you can be of
Oh,
that pure
oh, I'm going
consciousness.
to tell you exactly how it's going to go.
Okay.
I've done 9 advanced workshops, and I've
Okay.
seen the same trend every time. I'll come out on Wednesday night. I'll deliver a very clear and concise map to where we're going. Everybody will get fired up, and then on the first day, they're going to come up against themselves. And I want them to, but they're not going to get up and turn their cell phone on. They're not going to get up and fall asleep. They're not going to get up and text somebody or get on the
Right.
computer or turn on the TV. They are going to get beyond themselves, and they will break through either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, and then they'll be in love with life, and they'll realize how easy it's always been.
Wow.
It happens over and over again.
Okay. All right. So that's happening. I know you have another event in May. So what's the May event?
So the advanced workshop really that I was talking about is just it's just available for students that have done progressive workshops,
Hmm.
which will be the event that we do in May in Seattle.
Okay.
So we're doing a progressive event in May in Seattle. It'll be a Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And that's an opportunity for people to really start the process. Because it's not just sitting around and talking. People are going in and out of meditation the entire weekend. You come, we are going to work. We're going to change beliefs and perceptions. You're going to find the present moment. You're going to recondition your body to a new mind. You are going to tune into potentials in the quantum field. You're going to learn how to bless the energy centers of your body. I mean, it's going to be an active weekend.
Yeah.
That's important because that gives people the necessary tools then to step into the advanced workshop and practice in their life. Yeah.
Okay. And so the advanced workshop, or do you teach those once a year? How often do you teach those?
Wow, our biggest problem with our advanced workshops right now is that we sell out. I mean, we do one in the United States, we do one in Mexico, we do one in Europe, and we do one in Australia. And now we're thinking about doing two in Europe, just because our community is so large. I mean, we have an event in August in Munich, and it's just about sold out now. So,
wow,
I mean,
okay. But people go to Dr. Joe Dispenza to either go to hear your keynote speech on February 14th at I Can Do It in Seattle, so it's this weekend, and then they can go and to your website as well to sign up for the May event, which then enables them to do all this cool stuff that we talked about, those tests in 3, 6, 9 months.
Sure.
I just love your work. I basically, I don't go, you're probably the only person I've ever gone to that I've talked on the radio that I've just gone almost done every single thing. It's
wow,
just fantastic. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I can't wait. I actually cannot wait to actually achieve that state because, man, I'm in a wrestling match and I'm tired. Like, I want one side to win.
Well, I'm going to help you with that. And look, my theory is this. If anybody else can do it, you can do it.
Okay.
And all we have to do is just kind of get you beyond that little voice and kind of create the roadmap and remind you what you're doing, get you understanding how to do it again, and then we'll give you the time to actually practice it. And then sooner or later, your body and mind are going to work together, and you're going to be so glad that you pushed yourself to that point. And that's the cool part about it. Then you'll start creating really wonderful things, and then you'll go, okay, you go back into your life with a little bit more presence, a little bit more commitment, a little bit more intention, a little bit more awareness. All of that stuff lines up.
Yeah.
And you're a smart lady, so it shouldn't be too hard.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.